In the lobby of Enron's 50-story corporate headquarters in downtown Houston, there was a sign with 2 words on it. Ask why. It was on the coffee mugs, it was on the keycard lanyards, it was on the corporate stationery. The phrase was Enron's official slogan, and it was meant to represent a company culture built on challenging conventional wisdom. In the end, only 3 people truly asked why. Today, I'm going to tell you what happened at Enron, and while I do, I'm making Texas-style barbecue ribs. Yeehaw! Okay, so first up, we're going to preheat the oven to 275 and then remove the thin membrane from the back of the ribs. In its earliest years, Enron was a pretty unremarkable Houston pipeline company. It was born in 1985 out of a merger with a man named Kenneth Lay assuming the title of CEO. In 1990, Kenneth Lay hired a McKinsey consultant named Jeffrey Skilling. He was hired to lead Enron into the commodities trading market. One of Skilling's first hires was a young executive named Andrew Fastow. Skilling and Fastow pitched Enron as a company that would do so much more than move energy through pipelines. It would create a financial market for it. They would buy contracts, sell contracts, trade derivatives. Enron would become a market maker for electricity and natural gas. On paper, the strategy worked. Enron grew its revenue from $13.3 billion to $100 billion, and the stock peaked at $90 a share in August of 2000. Enron was supposedly the smart company, but inside Enron, the executive team had one question that they didn't want anyone asking. How exactly does Enron make its money? Now let's make the dry rub. In a small bowl, we're going to mix some salt and pepper. We will mix garlic powder, chili powder, onion powder, some smoked paprika, and a little bit of cayenne for some heat. January 1992, Skilling persuaded the SEC to approve an accounting practice known as mark-to-market accounting. What that meant in practice was that when Enron signed an energy contract, say a 20-year deal to deliver natural gas, Enron could book the entire estimated total value of the revenue at the moment the contract was signed. Not in 20 years when the gas was delivered or when the revenues were collected, but right then and there. But what happens if one of those contracts failed to perform as expected? Well, Andrew Fastow had devised a solution through a series of off-book partnerships designed to hide Enron's losses. For about a decade, it worked, until 3 people in 3 different places started asking questions. In late 2000, a short seller named Jim Chanos started reading Enron's annual report and noticed that something was off with the company's accounting. So he began short selling Enron stock. Chanos then tipped off a journalist at Fortune magazine named Bethany McLean. McLean spent weeks digging through Enron's public financial filings, and she kept coming to the same conclusion. She couldn't figure out how Enron was making its money. The reported revenue was enormous. The cash flow was erratic. The debt was significant, and the stock was trading at 55 times its earnings. Before publishing her article, McLean contacted Jeffrey Skilling directly to question them. Skilling became defensive and called her unethical. The third person to start asking questions was a finance executive at Enron named Sharon Watkins. Okay, next step. We are going to cover the ribs with olive oil and generously sprinkle the dry rub all over it. And then we're going to let it sit for 15 to 20 minutes to properly season Then we're going to wrap it up in tin foil and put in the oven to bake for about 2.5 hours. On August 14th, 2001, Jeffrey Skilling resigned for personal reasons, but only after selling $33 million worth of Enron stock. A week later, Sharon Watkins met with CEO Kenneth Lay. Watkins had spent the summer working on the company's deals with off-book partnerships that Andrew Fastow had created. These were the entities that were designed to absorb Enron's bad investments and failing contracts and keep them off the balance sheet. This allowed Enron to hide all its losses and keep reporting profits. Watkins wrote a memo to Lay. In it, she said she was nervous that Enron would implode. In September 2001, with the stock trading at $27, CEO Kenneth Lay held a company-wide meeting where he said that Enron's third quarter was looking fantastic and that the stock would soon soar to new heights. That, in fact, was a lie. Behind the scenes, Enron executives were selling stock like mad, over $116 million worth. And Enron's third quarter report turned out to be a massive loss of $600 million. In October, the SEC began a formal investigation, and the stock fell to $20 a share. By the end of November, the stock was trading at 27 cents. In December of 2001, Enron officially filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. At the time, it was the largest corporate bankruptcy in American history. In late 2001, with the stock in freefall, Enron froze their 401k plan, which was heavily invested in Enron stock, and employees helplessly watched their retirement accounts become worth almost nothing. In total, 25,000 employees lost their jobs, $2 billion in pension savings, and $1.2 billion in retirement funds. Andrew Fastow pleaded guilty to 2 counts of conspiracy, surrendered $30 million in assets, and was sentenced to 6 years in prison. Jeffrey Skilling was convicted on 19 counts of fraud, conspiracy, and insider trading. He was sentenced to 24 years in prison and was ordered to pay $45 million in restitution. Kenneth Lay was convicted of 10 counts of fraud and conspiracy. He died of a heart attack in 2006, 6 weeks before he was due to be sentenced. And ironically, the company that supposedly questioned everything never bothered to stop to question themselves. If only a few more people had had the courage to ask, why?